Hi, I am Carla Lauder with Spar3D.com, and joining me today is Gabe Paez from The Wild, and we're really excited to talk to him about collaborative work today. So just before we get started, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of give us a little background on your company?
Sure. So I'm Gabe Paez, founder and CEO of The Wild. The Wild is an immersive collaboration platform for teams to work together in augmented and virtual reality. Um, and yeah, we founded the company back in 2017 and then released it. We were in development for about a year and a half, and then released it right at the end of 28. Sorry, I don't even know what day it is. All the days are running together now. You know, it could be 2020, it could be 2024, who knows, but we're surviving this together.
So back along, kind of what drove you to develop The Wild? What was the AEC community kind of missing, or, what needs weren't being met?
So it really spun out of rethinking what it meant to collaborate, especially on environmental content. So I feel like we've had just a barrage of collaboration tools in the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. And the software industry has really taken this view of collaboration. What is collaboration? I mean, even just asking yourself, is it sharing files more easily across the cloud? Is it chat? Is it some sort of video conferencing? There are a lot of different definitions of what collaboration could be. And then there's, of course, the gold standard of collaboration, the in-person, in a conference room, sleeves rolled up. I got all of my materials around the table. And I think what I ask myself is, well, really what we look at as the gold standard is this in-person, in a meeting collaboration. Is it really the gold standard? Like there's some fundamental problems with this that I don't think are acknowledged enough. First and foremost, it requires everyone to be physically present. And I think we're seeing the fallout from that now more than ever, how fragile that is often. And maybe it's sometimes, of course, during a pandemic like this, but there's a systemic issue that is also present there. You're limiting your geographic ability to work closely with people. And if luckily we have an innovation right now, which is immersive computing, which is this, it's sort of the banner that I put under virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, all of these technologies that put the person at the center of the platform. And whereas the AEC community largely sees these as visualization technologies, I really see it as fundamentally the revolution we're building on here is a transportation technology. It's the ability to take everyone from wherever they are around the world and make them co-present in a space and looking at each other and talking to each other and pointing to things and walking around and able to control that space and manipulate it, design in real time. And that's just incredibly powerful, through that combination of an idea and these technologies and the connected internet. We can really create a transformative experience that redefines what the workplace looks like and redefines what people are capable of doing inside of that workplace.
So can you, for those who are not familiar with it, kind of describe in a little bit more detail, kind of what that experience of collaboration is like when you're within the wild? What is it that people are able to do and see when they're inside?
Sure. So the wild is, in its simplest form, you can think of the wild like virtual real estate. It's like we have spaces, we call them spaces in the cloud, that they're persistent. You create a space and it lives there. You can access it both together or separately, but it's a space. And you can fill that space with all sorts of different content. It could be anything from just presentations and 2D images, videos, all the way to an entire Revit model or a number of Revit models or a SketchUp model. It's space to create and play and ideate on what you're trying to create and communicate those ideas through experience. So by connecting a space inside of the wild to this content, then we've sort of cloud centralized all of that experience, and then we allow people to access that from different devices. So virtual reality headsets are maybe the one people are most familiar with. So Oculus Rift or of HTC Vive or a Quest, you can put that on your head, and then you can literally walk around and move through the space. And it doesn't matter where you are. If you have two people joining on from either sides of the country, they can talk to each other inside of the space. They can move objects around, and they see those objects moving around. They can create in the space. So that's what it's like to access from virtual reality. But you can also access from iOS using augmented reality. That allows you to basically project that space into the physical space that you're inside of right now. So if you're on, an empty lot where you're going to be building out a new building, new construction, you can augment that building and anyone inside of that space onto that lot. You can see the people in the space and talk to them, and you can physically walk around it. And then the third way to access is on desktop in either Mac or Windows. You can bring up the Wild in a 2D view and fly through it, just like you would if you were, on your own computer. But the benefit of the Wild, of course, is that anyone inside of the space you can see and you can talk to, because it's really collaboration at its core.
So what do you think that kind of AEC companies can kind of take away from this experience of kind of trying to learn on the fly, figuring out, how to get people to be working remotely who were previously in the same room? Are there, key things you hope that they can learn, that you're seeing people kind of realize as we go forward?
I think first and foremost, the big discovery that people are having is that, number one, it's possible, and number two, it's not actually that hard. I think the sort of change inertia that a lot of people face, you hear me even just talking about this, it sounds pretty crazy, and like, how would we, how we usually do design reviews is we go to a conference room and we put it on the screen, and that's just how we're used to doing it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it for a number of reasons. And I think, so what I'm seeing people discover is that right now, because they have to do it, they're all of a sudden realizing that there are so many, these hosts of options that are available, the Wild included, but other tools as well, that are able to really, you can have at least the same type of productivity that you were seeing in the office, and possibly even more, because your day is so optimized. You can easily just hop into the Wild and walk through a space together from your home office. And, you're saving yourself on the commute time, on all of the, waiting for somebody in the conference room for it to free up because they booked it ahead of time, and all those space restrictions. And it's just easy, And so I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for people to take away right now, is that it's just very possible and easy to get started.
And that kind of segues into what I was going to ask next, which is, for, the companies that are, have been kind of reluctant to take this plunge, or the ones that are kind of been on the fence for a while and are watching other people kind of do this, but not ready to do that themselves. Kind of what advice would you give them about kind of trying to, take all of this in and implement some of this?
Well, I think it's also about really being clear about the value being created, which I think even what I'm saying right now is probably new to some people. This idea of using virtual and augmented reality as a tool for collaboration, not just visualization. I think a lot of people in the 3D community understand that, virtual reality is a really cool way to visualize your content. And it is, but that's not it. That's not, there is value to that, but it's sort of like an incrementally better value, rather than like, wow, this transforms what is possible and what I'm capable of doing as a creative. And so that's what I like people to understand, is the thing that we're doing here is not just better visualization. It's allowing you to be, co-present with your collaborators from anywhere on any device, and not just visualizing this concept for them, but experiencing it with them. Just like if you're on site at the end of that project and, doing a walkthrough of the building, you're having that experience in the first meeting when you're still in the massing stage, and you're just looking at the basics and trying to shape up the idea, you can have this experience of immersive experiential understanding. I understand it because I was standing in it and I was walking through it, rather than just looking at this picture, this beautiful image that you made me. You can have that experience from the beginning all the way through construction. So even as you're coordinating with the team on site, you're able, using augmented reality is an excellent way to composite what should be and what is in one clear view, not having to, flip 300 pages through this document and being like, no, look right there. See, that's supposed to be, there's a translation, there's an abstraction that's happening when you do that. And this mostly comes into these frustrating moments on the construction site where you're trying to say, no, it's right there. And they're looking up there. That abstraction creates confusion, misunderstanding. A lot of people have even had this experience where they go through that and then somebody's like, yeah, I get it. Okay, I got it. And then they walk away and they didn't get it. and they do it wrong again or whatever. It's abstraction.
Right.
That's what that is. And it's error prone and it's frustrating, and we don't have to work that way. Like, there's something better. And that's what I want people to understand. Remove the abstraction, connect people in context with the idea, which is the virtual space, and then the built environment, the physical space. Mesh those things together, and you have really a new way to work that is very transformative.
I would completely agree with that. So that's been an awesome overview of that. My last question is kind of also, on the end of, kind of experiential. I would think too that this might broaden the types of people who would get involved at the design stage. For example, if you're building a hospital, or if you're doing something where you have a real specific, need, for like an operating room, for example, you could bring someone in and they could very early on pinpoint areas in the design that may not have come up until, way later, that could kind of save that type of work. Are you seeing those types of examples as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you make collaboration cheap.
Right.
When you make it easy to get anyone there and create like subject matter expertise, like a nurse or a doctor, and allow them to meet with you without the effort of flying them across the country, putting them up in a hotel, coming to your office, getting them coffee. Like, I don't know, there's so much labor that goes into like a work session coordinating that. If you can just bring them in from their home office instantly at minimal cost, get their, and not make it a huge thing, get their feedback in 15-20 minutes, and then iterate on the project, the quality just goes through the roof, because you have access, you have expertise, you're not doing guesswork and iterating on guesswork, trial and error. And yeah, it's huge to engage new stakeholders, which I think, you're seeing firms working through concepts of lean architecture, trying to engage, those stakeholders for sure. But it's expensive and it's slow and it's difficult to iterate,
Yeah.
And so this can sort of turn that on its head when you rethink your ability to virtualize that travel process and co-locate people instantly from anywhere in the world inside of your design.
Absolutely. And then my final question is that it sounds like too, that even beyond this crisis, that there's also a lot of potential to save on carbon emissions from travel and things that kind of remote work kind of removes as barriers that might have even an environmental impact. Do you have any thoughts on kind of the general future of how remote work might have a bigger impact?
Oh, of course. I mean, that is, don't forget that there is a looming crisis right behind this crisis. And the AEC industry has a big part to play in that crisis. I mean, construction waste, of course, is huge, but even the design process is a major contributing factor. Flying across the country for one meeting, is ridiculous. Honestly, it doesn't make any sense. Not today, and we can do better than that. that's sort of a big, and everyone's accustomed to business travel. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that love business travel, but there are a lot of downs to it. And so I would say that's a big part of it, is the reduction in business travel, the reduction in these sort of frivolous meetings that we're doing because it's a social construct, less than it is helping us do our work better. That's why I would say our goals for the Wild, it's not just to make it as good as flying across the country and meeting somebody in person. We want to make it better, because then you're still, even when you fly to their office and present to them, you're still presenting on a screen and you're looking through a deck probably, and or maybe watching a video fly through, but it's not the same as doing that walkthrough of the building at any scale, like being a giant looking down at the site and then going through it. You know, it's a premium and a better experience and more efficient for rather than flying across the world. And then the second thing, and maybe even a higher impact, is the reduction in commuting. I mean, remote work, it has so many benefits if you can really wrap your mind and your institution around it. But even for local employees, the reduction of like hour commutes or even half-hour commutes out of your day is a huge benefit. Huge benefit. And I'm not saying that offices go away completely. Not everyone wants to work from their home, but everyone maybe wants to work from an office that is closer to their home, walking distance from their home. And so by having these micro communities that we can create, physically micro communities, rather than trying to ship everyone into the city where that they can go into this big office building, and we're gonna really drastically reduce our carbon footprint. I mean, we're already seeing it today. You see what happens when you shut down travel and physically isolate people. Well, the world bounces back. And so maybe this is what it takes to prevent this looming crisis of climate change. It takes people waking up to the fact that, number one, this is important, and the world will bounce back if we help it, if we give it some space to breathe. And number two, it's possible. It's not going to destroy us. We can find creative solutions to not be so dependent on fossil fuels to move our bodies across the world so that we can work with each other. We can virtualize that process, make it much more efficient, much more effective, much more affordable. And in that, we're solving, a number of major problems simultaneously.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your answers on this. And I think this is kind of going to be really interesting for people to listen to, especially, considering we're all in this unique situation now. We're kind of really thinking about those bigger questions as well.